4 or 5 seconds. Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of the FuReel Podcast. On the podcast, we talk about what we experienced whilst we're teaching and practicing Kung Fu Tai Chi and how that benefits our lives. 3 parts to make us whole: mind, the body, the spirit. Here next to me is Sifu Gawain, master and founder of Jhung Academy, aka my one and only Faja. I have a challenge for you.
Oh, what's that?
You know how I introduce you with that line?
Yes.
I want you to come up with a line that introduces me for the podcast.
Oh, okay.
Okay? Then
Sure.
you can go here
Not
next to me
now.
is
not
this
now.
dude.
Yeah, next week.
Oh, I'll put you on the spot.
No.
Yeah, go on.
Nope.
Nope. That's happening.
Okay.
Okay. FuReel is about passion, it's about culture. It's not just about sharing a Chinese martial art, but it's about sharing the light at the end of my tunnel, and maybe this could be the light at the end of your tunnel, or you can just enjoy some really cool content, and this is FuReel.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Alright, so we have some questions and wonderings from Ging today, Nanad and Massimo. Massimo and Nanad, should we give a little backstory?
Sure.
They're Ging
Yeah, they are.
Nanad started back in Elder Street when I was a young dude.
I think it might have been 20 years ago.
Yeah, when I was 4.
Yep. 4 or 5, yeah.
Cool. But now he's back with his son.
Yes.
What, 17?
Yes.
16, 17?
Vladimir's
Your old son.
in year 12.
So he's training again.
Yep.
And Massimo literally just completed his trial period of his Jingmo journey.
Today.
And now he has become a member.
He has.
So he's a Jingmoer.
He is.
Got 2 questions, one from each of them.
Mm-hmm.
Nanad's is in a video and Massimo is in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Massimo isn't in your head.
The
question
Massimo's question.
Yes, is in your head. Alright, so let's do Nanad's one
Sure,
first.
okay.
So it's a video.
Yep.
Alright, here we go.
I noticed that I have different energy levels on different days. And I'm trying and wondering, is there a way to manage those energy levels in a way that every time when I come to training or to certain tasks, that I can have that energy level at that kind of...
So tell us about Tuesday and tonight. What was the difference?
But on Tuesday I felt full of energy and I did all push-ups and warming exercises without any problem. Whereas tonight and on Thursday, I feel like the aching of my body and everything, and the whole energy level is different. So it's more of a struggle than of really pushing it.
Yeah. So what do you want to know exactly?
How to maintain that to be every time when I come to training that I have that energy level. What would be thing to practice to have it at every time? I guess.
Okay then.
Yeah.
Alright, well it sounds like he's talking about his energy levels when he comes to training.
Yes.
So his question there was towards the end, what can he practice to maintain his energy levels better in training?
So he noticed on Tuesday, so this was shot on a Thursday, and he's commenting on the Tuesday night immediately prior, 2 days before, how he felt really, really energetic and so on.
Yep.
And then he came Thursday and he didn't feel the same energy, felt lethargic, and he wants to find a way of maintaining high energy levels all the time. So for those who are listening and not viewing it, to give you a little bit of history, as you mentioned before, Nanad was here 20 years ago.
Yep.
He's this year 60 years old.
Okay.
And he's
60,
a fit,
really?
60. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, he's a fit,
Didn't know
active man. His youngest child is 17. I think his eldest is 30. He still works every day, has a large property up in the hills, and he just has to keep going, right, to maintain. So energy levels are high. All right, specifically to answer the question, first and foremost, we've got to separate the 2 theories. You've got a Western theory and an Eastern theory, and it's very typical to see that from a Western point of view that things are very measurable, right? And therefore we can manipulate things in order to be able to maintain certain outcomes. And that's a very stereotypical, probably I could say comfortably a masculine approach to problems, right?
Measuring
measuring it, getting out there and sorting it out, finding an answer to the problem and so on. My approach is actually a little more Eastern in that it's actually about noticing what's happening in the body and being able to support myself working through that, because we're a complex organism. It's not as simple as saying, well, this is my belief. It's not as simple as saying, well, if I take a blood test and these elements in my blood are low, so I should take supplements to bring those up, then that fixes the problem. Well, it's not that simple, because there is a cause to why those things are low. And if I just keep approaching it from a symptomatic point of view, sorting out what I notice is wrong and not deal with the cause of the imbalance, then the cause will continue to keep coming back.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth.
Becomes a loop.
Yeah, it loops. So my approach is more Eastern holistic point of view, and that is the mind, body and spirit make up the whole. My mental, physical and emotional self will show up in my body in a certain way. So there are times for me, Nenad, there are times for me when this is week 105 of my 100 weeks, 100 Yilus a week. And there are times when I'm extremely, extremely tired. Now, I first started off seeing that at the very beginning of my 100 weeks journey as being a problem. And the problem is, I've got low energy levels, so I mustn't be feeding my body right. Let's get some high energy foods into me, stimulate, coffee, whatever, and see if I can force my way through. So, I might be able to fix that for that one instance, and then there's the flip side, the bounce back, is that I'm even more tired when I come off that high.
Yep.
So it becomes a bit of a snowball effect. It just gets heavier and heavier and heavier. The other thing that could be typically a typical approach is, I'm tired, so I won't exercise because my body needs a rest. Now, I'm not saying that my approach is the correct approach. It's just another approach. But what I can report on is that in the times where I'm extremely tired, by doing exercise, what I'm doing is I'm stimulating my chi circulation, and therefore my body feels more alive and less tired afterwards. So even to the point of when I have illness, as in a virus that I can't remember when it was, end of last year sometime, that my body was fighting from a Monday through to a Wednesday. And what I continued to do was my daily practice, but I reduced my daily practice intensity. I just didn't have the energy. It's not like I reduced it because I chose to reduce it. That's all I had. I only had about 10% of my usual energy. Yep. So I did my practice, still the same volume of practice, but at the maximum intensity I could give, which was about 10%, felt like 10% of what I normally would give. And I felt so much better after having practiced, even though my body was clearly fighting the virus. And I put it down to, if there's three parts of me, mind, body, spirit, by doing practice, at the very minimum, I'm improving my mind and my spiritual self, my mental and physical self. And therefore, what I leave behind is my body to fight the virus. So it's a physical thing. So Nenad, what I would say to you is that it's okay to feel lethargic on a Thursday, and there's probably, we're complex. There are so many things that would affect our energy levels, and my encouragement is to continue your regime of practice, but reduce the intensity. So only give what you can afford to give, rather than expect to always give at 100%. Because once we start in that cycle of manipulating my energy levels, then it becomes a circuit, a bit of a closed circuit. and at any age, but in particular when we're around 60 years of age, that is can be quite a risky activity to get into, especially at the age of 60. And let me frame up why 60. It's not that 60 is old. So in my background in traditional Chinese medicine, what I was taught was that the human body, according to the ancient texts, was built to live 120 years. In that 120 years, there are 3 cycles. The very first cycle is where we have exponential growth. So we go from a baby to a child, and we just grow exponentially all over. Everything is growing, and never proportionally. So things get bigger, and the other side doesn't. You can't say both kidneys grow at the same time, both lungs grow at the same time, both arms grow. It's stuff's happening, but it's exponential. Then near the end of our journey, from about 70 or 80 through to 120, there's a slow decline. So the beginning is a very steep incline over a short period of time, from 0 to about 10, 12. And then from 70 or 80 to 120 for 40 years or so, we are slow decline. And then in between, the longest period we call consolidation. So that consolidation is when our body matures, kind of thickens, and the best word I use in my head when I say when something matures, it kind of everything gets solid. So we learn more about ourselves, we experience life differently, we start to think about our purpose and our journey in life. Our physical body changes, all sorts of stuff like that.
Yep.
Now, in those 3 phases, there's 2 different types of exercise. So from traditional Chinese medicine's point of view, there's exercise that is rejuvenating and there's exercise that is depleting. Depleting exercise is a sort of exercise that we would do in our exponential growth. So we have to impact the body really hard. And the impact, incidentally, so the definition between depleting and rejuvenating exercises, that exercise must leave us with perspiration. Okay, so if I perspire, doesn't include hot weather.
Okay.
But after activity, when I perspire, I've exercised from a TCM perspective. My heart rate has risen. Okay. And then the third thing is, if I am short of breath, so I'm panting, that's depleting exercise. If I'm not short of breath, I'm not panting, then that's a rejuvenating exercise. So they're the 2 definitions, and it doesn't matter what we practice. So you can practice Kung Fu with the context of replenishing, rejuvenating, or you can practice Kung Fu as a depleting exercise.
Yep.
The only difference is, apart from the common one, perspiration, elevated heart rate, whether you practice to a point of shortness of breath. If you don't end up short of breath, then you've rejuvenated your energy. If you do end up short of breath, you've depleted. Now, what does that mean? Basically, what it means is when we deplete energy, we're asking the body to come back harder and produce more energy. When we rejuvenate, what we're doing is we are holding and nurturing the energy that we have at that time. So, logic will tell us that depleting exercise happens in the first exponential growth stage. Rejuvenating exercise happens at the end, when we are in our elder years. And then when we're in our consolidation years, we get to choose both. Right? Now, so Nenad, you and I are now reaching the end of our consolidation period. Therefore, it makes sense from a traditional Chinese medicine's point of view that our exercise must rejuvenate. Otherwise, what we do is it's kind of like we're driving the car by putting our foot down on the accelerator unnecessarily. We're driving it hard, getting from one set of traffic lights to the next in the shortest amount of time. We're going to run out of fuel. The fuel station is still 5 kilometers up the road, but the person who drives mindfully, without over accelerating and using petrol, will get to the fuel station. We may not. because we burn it out too fast.
Mm.
So that analogy about driving I use all the time for myself, and measure my everyday activity. Like, my aim is I'm here till 103. That's it. So don't ask me why. You probably wonder why, Dad. Why is it 103? I don't know. It's a number that's come into my head, and I'm sticking with it. So, given that I'm celebrating my 55th birthday this year, I'm about halfway.
Yep.
So my objective now is that I'm here to stay another cycle of my life. Therefore, being careful and nurturing my body's important. So, that's how I approach it. So every day I approach it the same way. And I've got this to-do list that is as long as yours, and we go as hard as we can. But I definitely don't push my body, because I think about the fuel station.
Yeah.
Like, I'm very particular about what actually has to happen, what must happen, and what would be nice to happen. It would actually maybe make no difference, but just it'd be nice that it happened.
Yeah.
So I let go of those ones and make sure I just focus my energy on the absolute, the must-dos. So Nenad, to answer your question, how do you? There is no how do you do that. How do you have the same high energy levels?
The question was, what do I practice?
Exactly. Well, what do I practice so that I have the high energy levels as I did? The answer is, don't practice to increase your energy levels. Practice because that is your daily routine. And then not practice with the outcome in mind, but practice being open and mindful of what you're receiving right there and then.
Yep.
And then everything else will sort itself out.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Well, I've experienced some energy levels lately, Nanette, and I have a history of the energy levels because I don't have a thyroid gland anymore, and when I did, mine was faulty. So I was falling asleep everywhere because one of the main jobs of the thyroid is to monitor your metabolism and your energy levels. So I take thyroxine on a daily basis. But what I've realized recently, towards the end of last year, on the long days of Tuesday and Thursday when we have morning class and then evening class, I get to about lunchtime and I feel really drained, and it doesn't matter how much I nap during the day, I just feel like I've only got space physically and mentally to do the autopilot thing. It's just I get through it, then I get home and I go to bed, and it hasn't been very fun because I feel like I burn myself out all the time. So this year I was kind of you use the word critical, but not on a negative sense, just mindful of what I'm doing, and decided to get some more sleep, as obvious as it is, but it didn't seem obvious. It just felt like, I get 1 or 2 hours there, it doesn't make a difference, but it makes a real big difference. And I didn't notice it until this week when Monday night, I didn't get as much sleep as I have this year. And this year I've been feeling great. Like by now, I'm not as tired as I have that same feeling, if that makes sense. But yeah, so this week on Tuesday morning and Tuesday day, I felt so drained, heavy head, back to that feeling from last year. And I
That's because Monday night you had to stay back.
Yes, but that was a good thing because it made me realize how I've been going this year. Like it was like a checkpoint. Monday night, didn't get enough sleep. Tuesday, I was back to that feeling and just reflecting, practicing. What's the difference? I didn't get much sleep. So then last night, which was Wednesday, so I woke up on Thursday morning, make sure I got enough sleep, and I'm back at what I call for myself a high energy level, and being able to think creatively and have the space to do extra things in my mind or do physically as well. And yeah, it didn't seem as obvious to me as it is, but more sleep really helps as well. And just, switching off the TV or laptop or phone, the screen at a particular time and letting my body zone out and sleep rather than get to the end point, let's say 11 p.m. for the sake of it, and try and sleep at 11 after I've turned the phone off, I naturally take half an hour, 45 minutes to zone down anyway. So, yeah, that's kind of what I've noticed in my energy levels. But like you said, we're all complex. So for me,
right.
more sleep helps, but might not for Nenad. He might be getting lots of sleep. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Cool.
Massimo, I don't have it written down because he's in your head. I mean, the question's in your head. What was his question?
So, framing this out, Massimo is a father of 3, and I think he's in his 40s.
Yep.
And just he shared with me this morning that he has always wanted to practice martial arts, but for one thing or another, had to let that priority go because of other more important priorities, and now has 3 children and sounds like a high pressure job, general manager of a marine company. And his question is, now that he's started, and he's so glad to have for us to have met, and now he's commenced his journey. His question is, how long does it take to get through every belt level?
Yep.
And he shared with me today that the reason why he asked the question is because what he knows about himself, he's also a marathon runner. And running a marathon allows him to satisfy this particular character trait of his, and that is he needs to be able to see the next checkpoint. When he can see the next checkpoint, he's got something to aim for, then he'll keep driving forward. And he says he doesn't enjoy exercise like some others can, just run around the block and go and have a swim in the pool and feel energized and like that he's worked out and go home. He said he can't do that. He's got to have an objective in mind. And therefore, what he enjoys about practicing Kung Fu is that there are belt levels, and there's a structured series of skills to attain, and in those belt levels, it gives him a goal to aim for, so that he keeps going. So, to answer his question, how long does it take? Wow, that's a really difficult one, in that we're all individual, because it all depends how much time we put in. I mean, we all know that what you put in is what you get back. But let's have a look at our history, for example. There was a period of time, Massimo, when in the 1960s and 1970s, where even though we had an idea of what we're teaching, we didn't know what order it was going to be taught in.
Yep.
So it was before the belt system. Belt system was started by us in 1973. And so prior to that, everyone just came to training to train. That was it.
Really?
That was it.
They came to training
To train.
to train.
But had no attachment to what they were heading towards.
All right.
Right? So in the traditional sense, that's how Chinese martial arts looks. There's no belt system. Then in the 70s, a belt system arose, coloured belts. I think we spoke about the order of the colours last podcast. And at that time, it was early stages, so we knew what was going to be covered in a certain belt level, but it wasn't so specific as to in what order. It just had to make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no... I guess the transparency was as such that the student really didn't know what else they had to learn. It was all the power was all in the instructor's hands. The power. And then in 1980... 1980... actually, no. No, actually, you're probably... It's probably 1985, actually. Not 86. Because I'm thinking about where we were teaching. So around 1985, we then went up another level of having a specific duration for every aspect of a belt level.
Okay.
So I guess what people talk about today, I notice on social media, there's a bit of a movement to point out the McDonald's style martial arts schools.
Hey?
Yeah, you don't see it, obviously. I do.
No?
McDonald's style martial arts school. That
They
means,
serve fast food.
No, that means taking a piss out of those schools that just keep producing black belts or red belts of martial arts student. And in the shortest amount of time, you pay X amount of dollars, you train after X amount of weeks, you get this belt. After X amount of weeks, you get that belt, and just like cookie cutter type of mentality of churning out lots of students.
Yeah.
Right, which is another way of doing it. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. There are positive and negatives on both sides. But we were once like that too. So in that mid-80s through to the mid-90s for about 10 years, our approach was very much like that. So self-defense course 1, black belt to green belt originally in 85 was 3 months long. And you only got to do 2 lessons a week. You couldn't do any more, right? And then after 3 months of 2 lessons a week, then there was a grading, and you either passed or failed. Most people passed. And as a matter of fact, we had 3 levels of pass. Pass with credit, pass with distinction. So we're kind of almost guaranteed you're going to pass. Yeah. There's a lot of motivations behind it, and I'm not making anyone wrong for it. It just was the evolution. That's what we went through. And then every belt level became longer in duration, and every lesson had specific content to be taught. So what it actually meant was we became accountable. So I know the purists out there will probably say, oh, then that means you guys were just taking money and ripping people off and not really teaching them. Well, and the flip side to that McDonald's type mentality is quality. So guaranteed, when you go and get a Big Mac here in Perth, it's going to be the same as anywhere else in Australia and the same as overseas, because they have a particular quality control.
Yeah.
So sure, there's many of us who don't see that as being a benefit, but in actual fact, what it does mean is that it keeps from a martial arts perspective, the instructors accountable. So we can't just rock up. So back in those days, we couldn't rock up and go, I don't think I'm going to teach tonight's lesson. We're just going to do something different. Now, mind you, I'm not saying that's what we do now, but because there was an absolute definitive structure to it, it meant that this is what we're teaching. These are the 10 points that we're saying. Every time we teach this, we must say these 10 things. And we must measure those 10 things in the student. And the student must practice it 20 times in front of me before we move to the next thing. So there's a guaranteed rhythm to it all, and a guaranteed system. The downside is that puts an awful lot of pressure from a business perspective to... It applies pressure, so it conflicts with, well, what's the best thing for the student versus what's the best outcome for tonight. It's like a bit of a juxtaposition where you're not really being able to be flexible enough to say, well, this student really doesn't get it. Even after they did it 20 times, they need more. Yeah. Right? So that was the downside. What ended up happening was we had most students were the same demographic, like the same type of people thinking the same way. Of course, because that's what we marketed, that's what we sold. People who signed up to it fit that mold, and that's it, right? So we weren't very diverse. We didn't have a very diverse population within the student body. And back then it wasn't called Jing Academy, it was called Malcolm Su Kung Fu School. So those who came to the Malcolm Su Kung Fu School then were all very much the same, very similar, because we marketed that type of approach. So people who wanted that would get that. Yeah. Which is, that's just another way of doing it. So let's fast forward to where we are today. If we talk about that type of very rigid structure as one end of the scale, then at the other end of the scale you've got anything goes, right? And I'm not saying that that's a good thing, but what I feel that really fits for me right now is that I take the middle ground. So in the middle ground, we have a structure, we have an order of what is taught, we have outcomes that need to be met in order to move to the next level.
Yep.
We encourage students to do the best they can. But on top of all of that, we meet the students halfway.
Yep.
So when I say meet halfway, that means what I understand, what I can see is that life is complex, that there's no such thing as what I commit to, I will be able to fulfill every time I commit to it. There are times where we just can't get to training, and for very good reason. It could actually be illness. It could be family priorities. It could be just the individual's priority. For that moment, they cannot. And therefore, what I see is that in meeting halfway is that we keep giving the content and make it available outside of class. So now we have our daily practice project sharing channel where people get to share their progress. There was we're built up to 300 videos in a month, where videos are going forward and back between the Ging mowers and myself. So that's one version of it. Another version now is where it's going to evolve to a live class situation. So it's like a virtual Jingmo where you get to tune into class with your prescribed questions, even though you're physically not there, because you might be not even in Perth, you might be somewhere else, and be involved in maintaining your journey. And then the third aspect is Jingmo on demand, where teaching content is available on demand like everything else, like Netflix and the rest of it. So that's my objective in meeting people halfway, maintaining the principle that daily practice is where the key is, not just turning up to training. So training is what we do with people, with others. Practice is what we do for ourselves.
Yep.
And that's the definition between the two. So you can actually come to training and keep up your daily practice.
Yep.
So Massimo, to say how long does it take, I guess the best way of answering that question really is I'm here to support you to get the best and the most enjoyment and the biggest learning experience from your Jingmo journey. And sometimes learning experiences don't look like good things. Sometimes they are very difficult moments, very challenging, and moments that we don't have an answer for, but it's painful. Regardless, that's what we're here for. We do have gradings on a regular basis, 4 times a year. So every quarter there's a group grading. I think there's one coming up at the end of March. Yeah.
Start of March, end of March. Anyway.
Well, you schedule it.
Yes.
I'll leave it to you.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome. So that's my answer to it. I mean, what do you see in all that? Because you grew up with this around you. Even though you weren't old enough to know what was going on, you would have seen what was happening and could feel what was happening.
Yeah.
When we're in Elder Street, for example.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, what really works is that saying of, what you put in is what you get out of it, sort of thing. So, what I would say to Massimo would be, like similarly, life is complex, but stay consistent as much as you can, keep training, and then it could take as little as, 3 months, 2 months, or 6 months, depending on how you do it. For me, when I'm learning stuff, when I know it, when I think I know it is when I can kind of embody the movement and not think about it in my head, when it just happens in my body. So that's my learning process. Yeah. Cool. And I'm supporting him as well in the mornings. So, and for me, almost sometimes everyone's different, so I approach everyone differently in that how I teach them and make sure they're progressing each lesson and stuff like that. I don't just stand in the corner and say do torso and then don't do anything, but I'm trying to walk around and articulate things for every individual and how they are in their progress, and
stand in their corner and tell them what to do.
Yeah. Okay, is that all for the questions then?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Well, the next part, I did some kind of research on the internet, but ultimately in my practice, I use the word critical again. I reflect a lot, and I ultimately just want to do my best every single day and maintain all the things that I maintain and be the best person I can. So when I reflect, I ask questions to myself, and I do practice, and I talk to friends, and just find out different things. And but what was going on for me recently was like stress through the Chinese New Year period, getting all the line dances around Perth and just all that. Didn't want to let anyone down and stuff like that. But the stress, how I kind of maintained myself physically, emotionally, and mentally, obviously through not obviously, but I did it through my practice and reflecting once again and just trying to be the best version of myself in those times. But I searched up pretty much, does exercise reduce stress? But then anxiety came with that as well. So I summed up the question: does our practice in Kung Fu and Tai Chi reduce stress and anxiety? So I've got like 3 paragraphs to read out, and then maybe we can touch base on our experiences and how our practice has gotten us through some tough times.
Yeah, sure.
Alright, so it says, exercise and other physical activity produces endorphins, chemicals in the brain that act as natural painkillers, and also improve the ability to sleep, which in turn reduces stress. Even 5 minutes of aerobic exercise can stimulate anti-anxiety effects. The physical benefits of exercise, improving physical condition and fighting disease, have long been established, and physicians always encourage staying physically active. Exercise is also considered vital for maintaining mental fitness and how it can reduce stress. Studies show that it is very effective at reducing fatigue, improving alertness and concentration, and at enhancing overall cognitive function. This can be especially helpful when stress has depleted your energy or ability to concentrate. When stress affects the brain, with its many nerve connections, the rest of the body feels the impact as well. So it stands to reason that if your body feels better, so does your mind. Exercise and other physical activity produce endorphins, chemicals in the brain that act as natural painkillers, which I said before, and also improve the ability to sleep, which in turn reduces stress. Meditation, acupuncture, massage therapy, even breathing deeply can cause your body to produce endorphins. And conventionally, And conventionally, wisdom holds that a workout of low to moderate intensity makes you feel energized and healthy. Scientists have found that regular participation in aerobic exercise has been shown to decrease overall levels of tension, elevate and stabilize mood, improve sleep, and improve self-esteem. Even 5 minutes of anaerobic exercise can stimulate anti-anxiety effects. So, I know I reflect a lot on how I feel after practice and before practice, and definitely have felt much better and feel like weight has been lifted off my shoulders. I have more space in my head to think about things, feeling more loose in the body, which this kind of explains as well. But is there anything that pops up for you in reading that out?
Yes. What I've noticed, and actually it happened in my daily practice project group in Loftus Community Centre on Wednesday morning.
This Wednesday?
This Wednesday. So when we got to the end of the class and we were sharing what we got for ourselves, one of the ladies started crying.
Okay.
And she says, I don't know why, but I've got this overwhelming feeling of sadness. And she says, I can't work out what it is because nothing has happened.
Yep.
But what I do know is that, and Simo confirmed all of this too from her background and study in as a psychotherapist, is that our bodies store feelings. And these feelings can be stored like our entire lifetime. And what happens is that when we move and reflect upon our movement, so it's not just the fact that we're moving, but actually we're conscious and mindful about our movement, we get to process stuff. And that process moment may not be cognitive. It may not be something that I will go out and intend on processing. This problem I've had, or why is it my family is all stuffed up, or whatever, whatever it happens to be. It's not like we go out of our way to do that necessarily. But every time we practice mindfully and we're present to ourselves, the body is processing. Even though the brain doesn't recognize it, it's stuff's going on. And so therefore it releases. The body will release stuff that has been stored. And we all have stuff. Like as human beings, we all have stuff. So this is why I am such an advocate for daily practice, is because that is how we heal. So our tagline, healing through Kung Fu, is not healing through practicing Kung Fu as in the brand of martial arts, but Kung Fu is in the daily practice, that grind. Healing happens, doesn't mean you have to be sick. And a very close friend of mine who's also in the medical profession, Jeff, he said to me one day, he says, why do you say healing through Kung Fu? It makes me sound like I'm sick. And I said, no, you're not sick. But back then, I couldn't articulate what it was because I hadn't actually discovered it for myself through my daily practice yet. I said, but I don't know why, but I can just tell you you're not sick, but there's something that happens when we practice. And because I hadn't committed to my part of the journey of daily practice, and I couldn't share that with him, I couldn't articulate it. And that's, like Jeff is a very intelligent man and top of his game and world-class surgeon, etc. And even he said the same thing. He says, what do you mean by healing? Because it sounds like you're implying that people have to be sick in order to do it. And I'm saying, no, I don't have the words for it, but no, that's not what I mean. But now I do have the words for it. And so what happens when we exercise, and I know the articles are talking about exercise, our lingo is about daily practice. What happens when we engage with our daily practice is that we're assisting and supporting our body to process stuff that's inside, stored feelings. Some of them are pleasant, some of them are unpleasant. Some of them are positive, some of them are negative. Some of them we feel good about, some of them we feel really bad about. Regardless of what they are, we get to process them. And that's what happens. So what happened on Wednesday, unbeknownst to this lady, was she was processing. And that was only her second lesson. Right? Second hour of doing Tai Chi with me. In a small group, free community engagement program. It cost her nothing except her commitment. And the fact that she keeps coming and is committed to it and reaches out to me in between, I know that it means a great deal to her, because just through her actions and her commitment. So therefore, when she's there, I also trust that she is totally invested. Right? Because not only is she invested outside of the class, she's also invested inside the class. Because we start at 6 a.m. on a Wednesday morning. Most people enjoy staying in bed at that time. And it's the middle of the week. So full-time employee, working person, middle of the week, 6 a.m. That's hard work. Hard to do. And it's free. It's so she's totally there. Therefore, it doesn't surprise me that even in her second lesson, she's processed stuff and it's coming out of her body and she has no idea what it was. But she could label it. She could label, I'm feeling incredibly sad right now. So, that sounds really deep and meaningful. And for people who are listening, it doesn't have to be like that. But it can be just like that. And you and I practice every day. We don't have these deep and meaningful things every day, but they do happen. And, it's just a process. We're complex organisms, lots of parts, lots of expression. So I agree totally and that's a very scientific view of how exercise affects the body, and it's a measurable thing, whereas my approach tends to be less scientific, even though we're about to start scientific research with postgraduate students at Murdoch Uni about the effects of how we teach what we teach to people with neurological disabilities and how it is that it affects them. And we're going to get some real science and real data from that. But still, my approach is very Eastern in that not everything is going to be able to be put down on pen and paper. and that just because it's there in pen and paper doesn't mean it stands alone. In actual fact, it's just one minuscule part of one big moving organism.
Yeah.
But having said that, it's great to have science be able to label stuff so we can measure it.
Mm.
And I think it's vitally important as well.
Yep.
Mm.
Okay. So I'll ask you the question again.
Did I deviate from the question?
You didn't even answer the question.
Oh, okay, sorry. Geez, you're good.
Yeah.
You're good.
When have you applied your practice during stressful or high emotional environments?
Oh, that's easy.
When have you used...
Oh.
Yeah, is there a backstory where you've used, like, I need to go practice because I'm feeling this way, or
definitely.
I've just experienced this, and yeah.
Every week.
Okay.
There's stuff going on.
Yeah.
I'm father of 3 and married. Like it's every week there's stuff going on. But I guess the one that probably, geez, there's so many. How do I?
Well, while you think of it,
Yeah.
my recent one was when I got sick last week.
Okay.
Right.
You share that.
When I got, I guess in Vietnamese and Chinese we say it's wind chill. Like when I got out of the car Tuesday morning and it was very cold and windy, and then it got absorbed into my body, and the cold wind was stuck. How do you describe that in Chinese medicine point of view?
Yeah, wind chill.
Wind chill.
Wind chill syndrome.
Yeah. Yeah, and I could...
Song fung.
So, yeah.
Yeah, song fung.
Okay.
Song means you're damaged by the wind.
Yep.
Mm.
So instantly I could feel effect to my body. Nose started to run, head started to feel heavy. Not that I was tired, it's just like that feeling of something's coming, and it was all because I wasn't sheltered from that particular breeze coming through. And I was processing that, and what I noticed was I used my practice like a medicine. So I only took meds once to go to sleep, I think, or twice. I try not to use medicine because I find that, of course, it does stuff to the body with the meds. So I try to naturally heal. So I use my practice as a medicine, because when I practiced last week, I felt, even though I was sick, still practicing, I felt like I was all clogged up in my nose and my mind and my head and stuff like that up here. But then when I practiced, I felt like I was able to spread out the sickness through my body and let it go. And that actually felt like that, and I felt better each time I practiced. But of course, when I'm not practicing, it heightened. My sickness heightened again. Heightened. Is that a word? My sickness came back.
Yeah.
Felt sick. Feel more sick again.
More sicker.
But you know, like the family was like, you should go to the doctor. You should take some more medicine and stuff like that. But I only took cold and flu to take away the symptom of my
runny
coughing, runny nose to go to sleep. And yeah, ultimately I just noticed that I used practice cognitively. I should do some practice to help me feel better, to spread out and help release the sickness, rather than stay at home, for example, and stay in bed and do nothing and let the body rot away.
Those who are listening, not watching, should see his face now. Rot away.
So yeah. That's not stress and anxiety, but that's another point where I've used my practice to help me heal from a sickness.
Cool. Yeah, so to clarify, I think listeners need to also know that there's a difference in Chinese medicine, as I'm sure is in Western medicine, between a common cold and influenza, which is a virus. Yeah. And we're talking about the common cold as in being affected by the environment around us.
Yes.
So... There, I think, a week and a half ago, a week and a half ago, Marianne and I had this huge argument, and actually I thought it was over. I thought, that's it, I must be getting divorced again. This is not working. I don't know how to get out of this one. How do we go forward from here? It was really serious, like it does probably once every couple of years. And what I trust is that we're able to work through But what I need to do is be able to support myself,
Yep.
enable to work through it. And I remember saying to myself, that's it. I am going out to practice tonight. I know that I don't feel like it, but I actually need to go out and practice. And there was some logic in it, in that, you've done your 100 weeks. You could have a night off. No, I need to go out and practice to clear my mind and bring myself centered so that I can actually go forward here very mindfully. So very stressful, and what I was able to do throughout practice was, and mind you, I think I did 40 ilus in that day. I think it was 40. There was a day where I did 40.
Was it that day though?
Well, I don't know. There's been a few days. I've kind of built up to about 30 ilus a few times a week now. And there was one day in particular I did 40. And I think it was actually that day because I was feeling so crap about myself that I just had to keep working it out. But the end result is I get clear and able to process stuff, and then be able to speak from a very, very vulnerable but honest position.
Yeah.
Be able to hear what her point of view as well, without all my ego getting involved and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's getting faster, like I must say, for those of us who are in relationships out there. You know, it's sometimes it feels like it's really tough and it may not go through. But in my experience, if we just keep working at it, the repair after the tear is happening faster. And I think part of it is for me to take responsibility for my own well-being, and daily practice is part of my self-care regime. And therefore, if I sort out my mind and my emotional self, then it's just my body. And of course, because we're doing a physical practice, the body also improves. So it's good all over.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, I think like ultimately we must sound like bloody practice phonetics or something.
Bloody practice phonetics. It's a G-rated, man.
But yeah, I think ultimately what we're doing is just helping ourselves, like well-being in all three parts. You can't deny that there isn't three. There is three.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And we're always working on all three, if not one of them that is more of a priority. Like, you know, if you're stressed, it's more of your emotions, so you work on that. Or if your body's really sore, then that's there. Or if you got lots on your mind, then that's there. And I think we just get lots from our practice, don't we?
Yeah,
it's good stuff.
And we talk about the amount of practice we do, but in actual fact, I hear lots of Jingmos who may do 1 yilu a day.
Yeah.
And get amazing results.
Yeah.
And some Jingmos don't even know the yilu and just do the first 13 3 times.
Yeah.
And say, I feel so much better about myself after doing it every day.
Yeah.
And then people just start out and say, wow, I've never felt so good, and I only know the foundation exercises. I only do the Jingmo hand drill. I only do the one combination, but I practice it.
Yeah, you don't need to know a whole regime of different exercises.
And it doesn't need to be hours a day.
No.
I mean, I'm a bit extreme. I think you're a bit extreme as well, but it doesn't have to be like that.
Yeah.
It can just be several minutes every day. As long as it's mindful, you bring yourself present to yourself, and there is a work hard.
Yeah.
There has to be a challenge to it. Got to be able to give something in. That's the pain plus reflection equals progress.
Yeah. I think that's the hard thing for everyone, though. You know?
Yeah.
Who aren't living it.
Yeah.
Is that it's hard to get into that zone without being told, like in class. You know, in class you come here, it's expected, but when you're at home, it's like Netflix or practice. You know, there's always an easy option.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
Lovely. I feel completed. Thanks, guys, by the way, who sent in questions this week. Piers, Marty, Tarrant,
Massimo,
and Nanad. We answered Nanad and Massimo, but decided to save Marty, Piers, and Tarrant's comments and questions for next week, so stay tuned for that. Yeah, we ran out of time, really.
Cool.
Nice. All right, well, is there anything to add?
Nope.
before we end the podcast.
Oh, yes, Sunday.
Oh, there we go.
Tai Chi Day, Yagan Square.
Yeah, right. Tai Chi Day, Yagan Square.
10 o'clock.
10
Yagan
to
Square.
11.
Yep.
Come do some free Tai Chi.
Yeah. Will you include the registration link in the description here for the podcast? Could you do that, please?
I could, but I don't think it'll go very far.
Doesn't matter. Can you please put it there?
Sure. Sure.
You look so excited.
Sure. Sure. Alright, well, that brings us to the end of the episode, everybody. You can check out some more FuReel content on Instagram and YouTube. FuReel Official is Instagram and FuReel TV is YouTube. Once again, thanks for listening and tuning in. We'll see you in the next episode.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
No, mate. Don't do it. I'm stopping it.
Oh.
Let's stop.